We are learning some interesting new details about a Florida murder-for-hire investigation as more documents are filed in the case of Shanna Gardner and Mario Fernandez-Saldana, the pair accused of plotting the murder of her ex-husband Jared Bridegan. We are taking a closer look at the possible motives and evidence with a former detective. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, good to be back with all of you. I missed you guys. I missed you. I was out on vacation, but I saw that Sierra Gillespie and Elizabeth Milner did a fantastic job filling in for me. I want to thank them so much for the great work. But now I am back and I want to get into it. So, do you remember the killing of Jared Bridegan, the 33-year-old father of four who was gunned down in Jacksonville Beach, Florida in February of 2022? He was driving home from his ex's house back to his own when someone apparently left a tire in the middle of the road. Jared reportedly gets out of his car to move the tire, so the tire was allegedly put there purposefully to ambush him because why? He was shot multiple times at close range, killed. And you know what? His 2-year-old daughter was in the back seat. Really chilling story. Well, now we're learning new details about this alleged murder plot, the one that investigators say was cooked up by Jared's ex-wife, Shanna Gardner. And this includes information that suggests more people could be involved in this alleged conspiracy. Now, prosecutors say that there was a lot of animosity between Gardner and Jared, both in and out of court, that they had gone through a bitter divorce and custody battle, that this might have been a motive. Well, almost a year later after this, police end up arresting Henry Tenon, who allegedly admitted to shooting Jared as part of a murder-for-hire plot, partially orchestrated by Gardner, and police connected Tenon to Gardner through her new partner, Mario Fernandez-Saldana. Now, I know there are a lot of players here, but stick with me. So, after Gardner and Jared divorced, she apparently started dating a handyman from her gym, Fernandez-Saldana. They ended up getting married. He and Gardner lived together. They shared custody of twin girls, 50-50 with Bridegan. And Bridegan had 4 children, by the way, the twins with Gardner and 2 younger children with his second wife, Kirsten. Now, each week, as part of this custody agreement, whichever parent didn't have the twins at that time, they would do a date night with them. And Bridegan had just dropped off the twins and was going home when he was killed. Now, going back to Henry Tenon, he was apparently a tenant in a property owned by Fernandez-Saldana. And investigators believe that Fernandez-Saldana hired Tenon to commit the murder using money from Gardner's trust fund. Well, Fernandez-Saldana, he was arrested in March of 2023. He was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, solicitation to commit a capital felony, and child abuse. Because remember, Bridegan's daughter was in the car when her father was shot. She was there. She was exposed to this. This is a form of child abuse, allegedly. Gardner, meanwhile, she was arrested on the other side of the country in Washington state. She was hit with the same charges. Both face the possibility of the death penalty if they're convicted. Tenon pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, and guess what? He's going to have to testify against his co-defendants. Now, we were able to look up the people allegedly involved in this homicide scheme on TruthFinder. For example, it shows Shanna Gardner's criminal history from a speeding citation back in 2016 to her first-degree murder charges she now faces. And results for Henry Tenon show he was cited multiple times for driving without a license, but he also pled guilty to domestic battery in 2003. His current charges are also listed among the results. And you know what? We actually use TruthFinder a lot in our research for Sidebar. It's one of the largest public records search services in the United States. TruthFinder can also pull up registered sex offenders in your area, which is super helpful for peace of mind when you think about it. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. Right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Okay, so getting back into this, as I mentioned, we have new details because new documents in this murder case are giving us more information about what prosecutors will be using or may be using to prove their case at a future trial. And that includes reports about interviews with these 3 players as well as witnesses. One of those witnesses, by the way, who apparently spoke with law enforcement, was a man named Shane, and he apparently told police he was leaving a friend's house when he and another car were stopped in traffic near Bridegan's car. This is according to a report on his interview with the cops. And it says, quote, he stated he saw a black SUV stopped in the middle of the road and a tire in front of the SUV. He initially thought the victim was changing the tire, so he approached to help. He noticed the driver door was open and the victim was on the ground twitching and moving. He stated he turned around and told the ladies to call 911. He stated he thought it was an accident until he saw the passenger window was shattered. He saw the little girl, so he grabbed her and took her back to his car. He stated that there was a male bystander, white guy with a hat, who stated he heard from a lady there was gunshots. He stated he was trying to ask the little girl what happened, but she was only worried about her dad. And when police got there, they tried to perform CPR on Bridegan, but again, he didn't make it. And in fact, a medical examiner's report would later state that Bridegan had a penetrating gunshot wound of his left shoulder and neck, and a perforating gunshot wound of left shoulder, neck, right shoulder, and right arm. Now, not all the bullets hit Bridegan. Some of them struck the SUV, which, again, it's terrifying to think about how close this 2-year-old little girl came to being shot, to being killed. It's incredibly frightening. All right, so I want to get into these new details. I want to talk about this complex investigation. So let me bring on right now Aaron Benzick, former detective and founder of Solve the Case, Cold Case Investigations. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So I know that there is a lot going on in this case. Have you followed it all? Have you followed this complex web that I just went through? I mean, what are your initial thoughts about it?
Yeah, it's interesting. You can see the stair-stepping that law enforcement goes through as they're starting their investigation. It takes almost a year. They're getting to that first suspect. And after they get to that person, new things unravel. They keep going. And it's that long, grueling investigation that does unravel a very complex plot.
By the way, wouldn't you agree that sometimes the murder for hire plots, when somebody allegedly outsources the killing to somebody else, you would think their goal is to wipe their hands clean of it, leave less of a trail, but it ends up leaving more of a trail. Is that your experience?
Yeah, once you start using people close to your circle, those are the people who are going to be looked at first. So as you're overthinking this heinous crime, you're starting to add extra elements, and those elements are the things that get you jammed up, the things that are going to get you caught, and it's just tragic. It just doesn't work. You just can't do this.
All right, so let's get into this. Again, I mentioned new details. January 2023, Duval County, Florida authorities, they requested authorization from a judge because they wanted to set up wiretaps on multiple people involved in this investigation. The judge ended up granting that request. And here's what the summary at the beginning of that application said. And in part, it says, quote, other than the murderer and the victim, the only other witnesses to the murder was Bridegan's 2-year-old daughter, who told Child Protection Team investigators that a man came up to the car, she heard boom, 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 and then daddy hit the ground. Before even going further, just how awful is that to think about? Then it says, without context, Bridegan's murder appears to be completely random. He was not armed. There is no evidence of a struggle. His murderers did not steal his wristwatch, wedding ring, phone, money, or wallet. Bridegan's truck was not stolen, and Bridegan's daughter was unharmed. In contrast to the stark randomness of the murder, there are relationships, circumstances, and investigative facts and evidence suggesting Bridegan's murder was anything but random. Instead, the investigation reveals Bridegan's murder is the culmination of events that began on February 23, 2015, when his wife at the time, Shanna Gardner, filed for divorce. For reasons that will be outlined in greater detail, the investigation has identified 5 people likely involved in a conspiracy to murder Jared Bridegan. So that's right. That document names 5 people that could be involved in this. Now, the investigators named Gardner, Fernandez-Saldana, Tenon. Who are the other 2? Well, right now, their photos, their names are redacted from the documents, so we don't really know who these people are. That's because the redaction, we have an ongoing active criminal investigation. Of course, only Tenon, Fernandez-Saldana, Gardner, they have been charged in connection with this case as of right now. So it's possible that there wasn't enough evidence to charge these people, enough evidence to say that they were involved. Aaron, if there is evidence against these other 2 people, do you think we could see new charges down the line, or the fact that they haven't been charged right now is a good indication they might not be technically criminally involved?
I mean, it could go either way. These could be witnesses that we're talking about that helped unravel some of the probable cause. or this investigation may not just be over. We've gone to several months, close to a year in between the arrests of these involved parties. So this could be something that they have arrest warrants on 3. They're continuing to look, and they're going to focus on anyone that contributed to this heinous crime is going to be charged. And this is a crime that not only, took a father away from his children. The reports list that the daughter in the car was unharmed. Make no mistake, that daughter was harmed. This crime of someone thinking through this whole murder for hire was a selfish crime. They were thinking that they're just going to take with this one person out and not thinking about all the other people that it affects. So law enforcement absolutely is not going to stop until they reach the end of that line. And I think that's what you see in these reports. You've got the redacted names in there, and it's people that, hey, we're not sure what they've got, or we may know, and we're still working on things, or these are people who helped us get to the 3.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think they could be cooperating witnesses, maybe flipped on these defendants? Maybe they won't be charged. Maybe they were granted a promise they wouldn't be charged, but they could be helping with the prosecution's case.
It could be, yeah. And it could be that this doesn't extend to 5 people, but there's definitely 2 additional people of interest who have been relevant to this case.
Yeah. By the way, very interesting when you see how police justify the use of a wiretap or a warrant, right? And you're seeing kind of the language that they're using well to say that this is the reason we need to investigate further.
Sure. It's a very invasive investigative tool, so that when you're going to use that tool, you've got to have very clear articulation. You've got to have very clear probable cause. This can result in evidence related to your investigation to go so intrusive. And when you've got a complex crime like that, absolutely the right tool to use to be able to get to those facts.
All right, so now I want to take a look at these interviews that the police apparently conducted with Gardner and Fernandez-Saldana, separate from each other. So in the days after Bridegan's murder, both came to the Jacksonville Beach Police Department. Detectives started to learn more about the complexities surrounding Gardner's relationships. And here is a snippet from the report about her interview. Quote, "Nobody originally knew they got married. She stated they did not know each other very well when they were married. She stated Mario wanted to help her with the kids, but the only way Jared would allow that is if they were married. She stated Mario and she had just started to date when they traveled to Utah to see her parents, and her mother suggested they get married. Gardner stated she knew they would not be a typical marriage, but for the convenience and built it into a relationship. They wanted what was best for the kids. She was asked if Mario had ever been around Jared. She stated Mario had only met Jared once, in court. She stated Mario attempted to introduce himself to Jared and he would not shake Mario's hand. She stated there was a time when Mario went to pick up kids for date night and he purposely went up and knocked on the door of Jared's house knowing this would upset Jared. She stated she avoided confrontation, but Mario did not." Aaron, kind of a bizarre relationship here. And I also think her account or her version that she gave to police was interesting, right?
Yeah, you've got, it's like she doesn't even want to be part of this marriage. She's not sure other people are pushing her that way. It seems like it's more of a utility, something that mutual benefit than an actual loving traditional relationship. And that's how you start falling into some of these problems that you get into.
Again, taking it all, if she's telling the truth about it. You know what? I got kind of the sense, and this was just me, was she trying to put a little bit of the emphasis on Fernandez-Saldana? Like he was the one who was a little bit aggressive towards Jared?
So she's kind of laying the groundwork for the common deflection. Like, yes, I'm involved in this, but I'm going to be lower level. He's the more confrontational. He's forcing the encounter at the door. He's forcing the engagements between the two of them. So that's certainly something that she could be building up.
Yeah, I'm not saying that'll be a working defense, but again, just these just seem to be some of the comments that she allegedly made to law enforcement. Now, when police spoke with Fernandez-Saldana, he told them that on the night that Jared died, he didn't really remember when the twins came home. He says Jared never got out of the car when he dropped them off, instead watched them go inside. It says, quote, Fernandez-Saldana advised he did not see the kids come in, but he did say he heard them enter the residence. He would advise he was racked out on the couch. Once the children came in, he stated he went upstairs and took a shower. Fernandez-Saldana advised that Gardner greeted the children when they arrived. Fernandez-Saldana continued to advise he was really out of it due to taking gabapentin. Fernandez-Saldana stated he takes this medication in high doses and becomes zoned out. Fernandez-Saldana continued to say that night he was more out of it than anything. Goes on to say that Fernandez-Saldana would go on to explain gabapentin is a nerve blocker which he uses for pain and headaches. Fernandez-Saldana stated the medication makes him drowsy. He would continue to explain he takes a high dose. So Aaron, he's now on the record here saying he takes a lot of this medication that makes him feel out of it. Again, if we're talking initial statements to police, what do you take away from that?
He's deflecting. It couldn't have been me. You've got this murder. You don't know who did it. You might be looking at me because of conflict that we have, but it couldn't be me. I'm taking this medicine. It does this and that. I'm out of it. Yeah, I remember him dropping off, but I went upstairs. So, it's the initial deflection, and it's trying to redirect that lens of law enforcement, make sure they know, hey, look elsewhere. I couldn't have had anything to do with this. I was on medication. How could I have killed somebody?
Well, a month or so later, the couple, who eventually seemingly separated, they were back in interview rooms. Fernandez-Saldana was apparently upset about the media coverage of Bridegan's murder and the fact that Bridegan's second wife, Kirsten, was pointing the finger toward her husband's ex. There was a report detailing this interview from April of 2022, and it says in part, quote, Fernandez stated that what Kirsten is stating is starting to affect the business of Shanna's parents as well as their bakery business. He further stated that people are starting to accuse Shanna of being involved. Fernandez stated, quote, the problem is I am running out of F's to give and I am very petty. Fernandez stated he was going to go on Facebook Live and let her, meaning Kirsten, have it because I want her to shut up. He also stated they were going to seek legal counsel. He also asked if we, the police, were instructing her to do this. So Aaron, that's interesting too, kind of this paranoia setting in there, especially when you think about if he's completely innocent of this, the fact that he's getting angry at this widow, on one hand, you could say she's falsely accusing him and Shanna Gardner of being involved in this. I can understand his frustration, but also you have to say, if this guy was killed and you had nothing to do with it, is that the right reaction? What do you take away from those comments?
No, where's the empathy? Kids have lost their father. Families have lost their son, and you've got someone upset because it could help affect your bakery business. And so you're looking for empathy here. You're expecting people to understand, like, this is tragic, and if it's not him, then they don't know who's killed him. So we're looking at, let's figure this out. Let's support this family, this community, come around and support them. But no, in hindsight, we know that this person is clearly trying to keep deflecting off of them, and it's annoying them that the spotlight might be getting a little close, that they're talking about them, they're looking at them, and it's a defensive mechanism that you're seeing.
By the way, in that same interview, Fernandez-Saldana talks about Gardner's children. It says, quote, Fernandez was asked how the kids were handling everything. He stated they are thriving, and it makes it easier. They are not moving between houses. He stated they are mourning, but they are not grieving. Kind of interesting to say. Now, I do want to talk about something else, Aaron. So police, they end up serving Gardner with a search warrant for her home and her car in Washington. And her mom and her children were there too when the search was happening. Police end up confiscating her Apple Watch, her iPhone, a Wingtech cell phone, an Acer laptop, a tablet, 2 Apple MacBooks, and a T-Mobile SIM card. And apparently, according to the report, police had said that they were looking for phones, and someone responded during this search, not clear who, but someone responded, like burner phones? And also reportedly, one of the children told police that his mom, Gardner, kept, quote, important electronics in her bedroom closet. Aaron, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I don't think it's common for families. So here's our burner phones. That might speak to, the parents being like, hey, like, kids don't play on these phones. These are important. So there's been some kind of conversation about these phones and electronics. And I think it really speaks to something calculated on them. They were used for specific tools and specific purposes. And that's 100% going to perk the ears of law enforcement. When you're hearing that, your attention is drawn to these. Why are we talking about burner phones? Why do people in the house know about burner phones? And if they're there doing a search warrant, that's one of the places they're going to be expecting to find some clues.
Well, talking about electronics for a second, and again, Fernandez-Saldana and Shanna Gardner, they are innocent until proven guilty, right? I mean, we're not talking about Tenon, but these documents, they also show the evidence that police had against Tenon and Fernandez-Saldana. So Tenon's cell phone and car data apparently shows that he was following him leading up to the shooting. For example, weeks before the shooting, Tenon was at the gym where Jared's daughter had been taking lessons. And if you've been following this case, you may recall that Tenon's truck was caught on surveillance footage after the shooting, and apparently Tenon had left it in a friend's backyard for months afterwards. And there were also handwritten checks from Fernandez-Saldana to Tenon. And by the way, the new documents reveal that Fernandez-Saldana, his phone, apparently pinged at the place where Tenon was living, both in the morning and the evening the day before Jared Bridegan was shot and killed. Police also found the tire, or a type of tire that Jared remember the tire that he had found in the middle of the road? They apparently find that same tire on Tenon's property too. And remember, that property was owned by Fernandez-Saldana. So, Aaron, these new documents are showing kind of what the evidence is and what might be presented by prosecutors.
Yeah, I mean, it's showing how strong that case this is. Specifically, you've got the actual shooter. You've got evidence directly linking his actions, his prior activity prior to the offense. These things connect. Looking at a tire in the roadway, you're going to be able to look at serial numbers on a tire. You're going to be able to find out when that tire was manufactured, all the way down to the week. You're not going to be able to pair it up with another tire in regards to a specific serial tire that matches a VIN number. But if you've got tires that were produced in the same week at the same factory, at your crime scene and at the residence of your suspect, that's good, solid evidence. Those things link. And then you start adding on layers. When we're looking at electronic data, we're looking at phone location information. Are phones in this area? Are they in that area? Layer that up. We're wanting to match that with surveillance video, other points of evidence. And this is a strong case. Now we're starting to branch into checks or payments from other people. Questions would be, what is those payments for? Who are those payments from? And identifying, is that leading us to more of the actors in this case?
Well, Gardner and Fernandez-Saldana, they are expected back in court later this month, and we will see how this case progresses. Aaron Benzick, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.